Welcome to Sharpe Insights, conversations with your plan giving experts, a podcast for development professionals. Whether you're new to the field or looking to enhance your existing program, we will provide practical tips, expert advice, and real-world stories to deepen your understanding of plan giving. If you're committed to securing long-term support for your nonprofit, you've come to the right place.
Welcome to Sharpe Insights, conversations with your plan giving experts. I'm your host, Grant Miller. Today we're discussing an often underused strategy in plan giving, the Legacy Challenge. These campaigns take something inherently future-focused, a planned gift, and create meaningful impact in the present. Joining us today is John Jensen, Director of Plan Giving at Washington National Cathedral, and the architect of their recent highly successful Legacy Challenge that inspired donors, unlocked current funding, and secured tens of millions in future commitments. John, thanks so much for joining us again. We're really excited to have you back.
Happy to do it, Grant.
I guess to start, can you tell us a little bit about Washington National Cathedral's plan giving program before the Legacy Challenge and why you decided to do the Legacy Challenge?
Okay. The cathedral has received plan gifts for a long time, and we had somewhat of a plan giving program going before I came on, but it was kind of a little bit hit or miss over the years. So I was brought on to really kind of crank up the program, get things going, institutionalize things and the like. And before we started the Legacy Challenge, we had about 350 members in our Founders Society, which is our Legacy Society. Roughly 95% of our Legacy Society, maybe 98%, had never told us what they were considering, what they were planning on giving to us. I looked at our average bequest size and average bequest revenue each year for the previous 15 years before I arrived, and it was somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million. And it was about 20 to 25% of total annual giving. What happened is the cathedral recently expanded the plan giving program, the effort, the staffing, the whole 9 yards. That was when I was brought on. And we're in the middle of the silent phase of a $150 million comprehensive campaign. And I was brought on just before that reached the public stage. And that's when we decided to do a Legacy Challenge, literally about 6 months before we did the public launch of the comprehensive campaign.
So for those of us who are new to the concept, can you tell us what exactly is a Legacy Challenge and how does it differ from a traditional matching campaign?
Sure. Legacy Challenge is really a way to get people to share information with you for two reasons. One is to let you know they put you in their estate plan at all, and two, to let you know how much they put you in for. Now, obviously that can change, but one of the problems you have is that for most charities, the great bulk of the people who put you in their estate plans don't tell you prior to death. And an even higher percentage won't tell you what their planned gift is going to be. There are lots of reasons for that. But the fact is they don't tell you. And part of the reason is they don't think there's any reason you really need to know. Okay, when you do a Legacy Challenge, the way it works is you get a donor or donors to agree to commit to fund a match. So in our case, we get 2 donors that agreed that they would commit to match up to 10% of people who tell us that they have put us in their estate plans for in whatever way that might be. They would match 10% of that up to a maximum of $250,000. So that means if you told me you had put the cathedral in your estate plan for $250,000, we would get $25,000 immediately. So that's the incentive for our plan giving donors to tell us, one, that they put us in their estate plan, and two, what the amount is. Obviously, it's estimated. And in doing that, it generated some interest, some excitement, and gave people a reason to share information they otherwise normally would not do. Now, obviously, nobody knows when they're going to pass away, but on average, my sense is we're probably looking at 15 to 20 years from the time that somebody says, well, put you in your estate plan through a challenge like this, and the time that you actually get the spendable cash. On the other hand, you'll also have some of them that will pass away before the campaign is even over. So all of this stuff works very well. Now, what happened with us is, in addition to the match, the way we set it up is that the match was for either new or previously unknown estate gifts. Anyone who increased the amount of their estate gift where they had told us previously, so the increased amount would be matched, and anyone who had made a gift and told us they'd put us in their estate plan, but never told us how much, which was about 98% of our legacy society. So it would include all traditional types of plan gifts, bequests by will, by trust, IRA, charitable gift annuity, charitable remainder trust, gift of real estate through their estate plan, anything that was intended to come in a testamentary fashion. And the time frame was from September of 2023 through December 31st of 24, later extended to March of 25. And we'll talk in a minute about why both of those were not good times, but you learn every time. There was no minimum age, no minimum gift amount. If they wanted to tell us they put us in their estate plan, but didn't tell us how much, then that would trigger a $1,000 match from these donors. And we also stressed endowment gifts. And the reason for that is that endowment gifts are such a natural for a legacy challenge and planned gifts generally. Now, if you're a health agency like American Cancer, where you're trying to cure cancer and people really don't want you to exist, endowment may not matter. But if you're an institution that is designed to be around for a long time, and the Washington National Cathedral is really designed to last for at least 1,000 years. I mean, that's the way it's structured, that's the way it's built, that's the way it's designed. We have a real need for endowment, and people can understand that, and they understand it very, very naturally. Does that give you what you're looking for initially?
Yeah, thanks. That's real
Okay.
helpful. So I was not really sure how the Legacy Challenge was structured overall.
Mhm.
Initially, I thought, oh, it's a single event, but it's a campaign that goes over months, right?
Yeah, it goes on anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on the charity and how they set it up. This
Okay.
is the first time we'd ever done it. And so we initially set it up to run about 18 months. Now, the problem that I referred to earlier is that we started it in September of 23. And we kicked it off as part of our $150 million comprehensive campaign. And we did it with some fanfare, and we had a big event, had a lot of people here, and sent a lot of mailers out. And then what happens with most charities in the fall of every year? They start hustling and asking for a lot of annual gifts. And so what happened was we got started a legacy challenge, and then we realized we had to slow down and back off a bit because we didn't want to interfere with the annual giving cycle. So that was lesson one. Next time you do it, if you do it again, do it starting in January or February, where you don't get into that kind of issue. The second issue that we discovered at the tail end is we were going to end it up in the end of December of the following year. Well, you run into exactly the same problem. It's both an issue of if you try to kind of race toward the finish and do a lot of marketing and reach out to a lot of people in those final month or two, you're again interfering with the annual fund campaign where you're generating all that operating revenue. And so what we ended up doing is to avoid that, we extended it to finish off at the end of March of 2025. So it ended up being about 18, 19 months total, but they were really important because what happens if you do something like that, as we learned the hard way, is you lose some of your momentum. And part of marketing is repetition. Part of marketing is getting messages to people and getting it to them several times so it sinks in. We had to have several breaks as a result of that. So those are a couple of the lessons that we learned. There are some others, but those were important parts.
Okay. I mean, one of the most interesting aspects of this is that donors can unlock current funding based on a future commitment. How do you approach potential donors to unlock the gifts now? Who are those donors, and what's your strategy for attracting those
Sure.
major donors?
We did it a couple of ways. First of all, you do the announcement, you send out marketing materials, you particularly go to your Legacy Society members, give them some advance notice, let them know this is about to happen. We also discovered it's really important to let them know that in most cases, if they will share with us the estimated amount of their planned estate gift, that will be matched, because in almost all cases, they had not told us that before. If you don't specifically tell people that, they will assume that because they told you some time ago that you're in their estate plans, that it wouldn't be matched. And they never remember if they've actually shared details with you or not. So that was a big part of it. Secondly, we tried to call up donors to explain in person, one, what the campaign is, how we're doing it, and the fact that in their case, if they were to share this information with us, and obviously it would be kept confidential, that they would generate the match. In nearly every case, they didn't realize that was the situation because they just made an assumption and didn't read the materials over very carefully. So that was a big part of that. Beyond that, we tried to send out mailings, email. We tried to include information in there in our magazine, The Cathedral Age. Any chance we had, we would put references in there and let them know that their gifts would be matched. And the match was 10%. And from talking with quite a few other charities that have done this, what we discovered is 10% is the right number. If it's higher, that doesn't generate any more gifts or any greater probability people respond to gifts. If it's lower, it doesn't have quite as much of a ring to it. 10% seems to be kind of the sweet spot. Now, the next aspect of that is what's the upper end? In our case, we said that the donors, and they agreed with this. In fact, one of the donors had funded a legacy match for a similar campaign, Legacy Challenge, at another charity here in the Washington area about 10 years before. It was very successful. So one of the questions becomes, if you cap it at $250,000, which means that if somebody tells me that they have given us in their estate plans $250,000, that the match would generate $25,000 immediately to the cathedral. And one of the questions that arose is, will that cap gifts? Will people say, okay, even if I was going to give you $1 million, I'll do $250,000 instead? We found that didn't happen. In fact, we had a fair number of people who ended up giving us and committing to us gifts that were well in excess of $250,000, which is terrific. It just got them talking to us and sharing information, and it worked really well.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question was, what if a donor came in and said, I wanted to give $1 million, and then the matching pool donors were like, hey, wait a minute, that's a little more than we were thinking.
We would say, thank you. That's terrific. Can you go higher?
Yeah. So did you find that the Legacy Challenge, I assume that it did, but can you talk a little bit more about the sense of urgency that this created in your potential?
The fact that it's a limited time creates a sense of urgency. And we all know that fundraising does much, much better when you create a sense of urgency, when you give people a reason to act today instead of tomorrow. And one of the aspects of planned giving is that people who are doing estate gifts to a given charity recognize that there's no immediate need why the charity needs to know what's coming down the pipe. You tend to assume you're not going to pass away for quite a while, and legacy donors tend to live a little bit longer than people who don't. And so it's hard to get that sense of urgency because of this. This matching gift is what creates the sense of urgency and gets people to respond. And they're excited. I mean, we got people who would call up at the very end of the campaign and say, I'm sending the thing in today, but it might not get there by the 31st of March. Will it still count? I said, don't worry. You've told me. I will make sure it counts. And it did. And it was very successful. I mean, we raised commitments of something over $35 million. That was a nice chunk. And given that was, compare that to $3.5 to $4 million a year. I mean, that's basically 10 years worth of planned gifts. And I know in retrospect, there are a lot of our Legacy Society members that we did not reach with this or that didn't respond, that had we followed up and called them and reached them, I think we would have gotten significantly more commitments and higher dollar amounts.
So is that something you do differently next time?
Absolutely. We would make sure that we had structured in time to make these calls and to reach these people even earlier in the program. And I think we've gotten much, much larger dollars committed. And the interesting thing about the cathedral is that from everything we've seen, our donors are extremely committed to the organization. And we have found that a very high percentage of our donors who tell us they put us in their estate plans, when they pass away, they absolutely make that gift. The other thing that I want to mention is that an issue that crops up very quickly that you want to address in your policies before you launch the campaign is, how are you going to credit residuary gifts? If somebody says that I've put you in my estate plan for $25,000, that's easy. It's 10% of that, $2,500 is the match. That's great. If they say you're in my IRA, but one, I don't know when I'm going to die, and two, I don't know, what the size of my IRA is going to be down the road, or, the residue of my estate, it's all the same issue. What we said is that we know from experience that if we have 100 people that tell us they've put us in their estate plan for X dollars, 15, 20, 30, 40% will end up not giving us anything. Either they take us out of their estate plans, they pass away with nothing, something pops up and the gift simply never occurs for whatever reason. You'll get another 20 or 30% that will end up giving you exactly what they told you they're going to give you. And then you get another group that will end up giving you what turns out to be significantly more than what they had planned on. And the result is that you'll get more from that 60 to 70 of that 100 that do put you in their estate plans and make a gift than you were getting from those 100 people that had committed to a specific amount, even including the residuary gifts. So what we said is that tell us what the value of that residuary gift is, or your IRA, or the residue of your trust today, whatever today's dollars are. And we know in some cases it's going to go up, some cases it's going to go down, some cases not going to happen at all. But on average, we find that we're going to get all that you're committing to us from the group as a whole. And people thought that was terrific, and they responded giving us good information. Now, we obviously committed to them that we're not going to share this information publicly. This is strictly for internal purposes. We are going to share the overall amounts, but not what Jack or Mary might have committed. And it gave people a lot more comfort to share information with us about that, because they were really hung up on how they come up with the value of a residuary gift that's going to be coming in down the road where they don't know what it's going to be. And I also included all IRA gifts because we know that when you're old enough to have to start taking money out of your IRAs, the federal government requires every year, you could very well chew through the whole thing. On the other hand, we also know that in many cases, people will ending up with a lot more money in their IRA when they pass. And so we again said, look, statistically, it's all going to iron out. It's all going to end up in the wash. It's about the same thing. So tell us that. People were fine with that.
Okay, what about previously undocumented plan gifts, like people who came forward and said, "Oh, I put you in my estate plans 5 years ago, and
Yep.
I haven't mentioned it to you." You know,
I would say that was probably the largest number of donors. And in fact, when you do these things, that's the group you want to focus on the most, because those are the people that are already clearly committed to you. They've already put you in their estate plans, and you want to be constantly cultivating and stewarding them and giving them credit for what they've done. Now, when we're able to reach somebody and have that discussion, we found that those people, for the most part, were willing to share the dollar amount with us and let us know what that's going to be. So that is a great source. And as I say, that's the biggest percentage of gifts that you're going to get where you suddenly know about them. Now, if you know somebody, I think of one person, we thought, well, maybe we're going to get $40,000 or $50,000 from that donor. Turned out that donor committed to over $1 million. Well, I got to tell you, we're stewarding that donor a lot more carefully today than we might have before. And it also gives you a sense of the level of their commitment. And then the stewardship and the involvement becomes a very natural kind of thing. And in fact, a lot of legacy challenges are launched primarily to reach those people.
that's great. So you had a lot of people come to the surface that were maybe a little buried before.
They came to the challenge and they stepped up.
What about members of your existing legacy society who you know are giving a planned gift in the future? How does it work for those folks?
It was really the same thing. Whether people had put us in their will or in the estate plans 5 years ago and never told us, or whether they told us 5 years ago that we're in their plans but never shared any dollar amount. We treated them the same. And we did ask them to share the amount so we could generate the 10% match, and pointed out that we're going to get that immediately, even though Mrs. Jones is likely to last for another 15, 20 years or even longer. And we
Okay.
had some young people come in as well, but it was mostly people in their 70s and above.
Okay. You mentioned finding some donors who have increased the amount that they were going to give, and you maybe didn't know about it before.
Yes.
So, just beyond the dollars, what did the campaign do for donor relationships and engagement in general?
It did a lot because it gave us another excuse to talk to our donors. It uncovered some significantly larger gifts, which meant that we were much more actively involved in stewarding and taking care of those donors. The other thing that it did that I thought was really valuable, boy, did it give us a lot more credit with senior management. What happens is most people in top development positions don't come through the plan giving side. They come through direct mail or major gifts, foundation giving or whatever, but not through plan giving. which means they don't have a good understanding of how plan giving actually works and what generates these kind of gifts and the value of stewardship and time spent and investment. And when you look at senior management in the larger sense, the CEO, the chief operating officer, the other VP level kind of people, they don't have any clue about plan giving and how it works. Well, like anybody else, if they don't know what an answer is, they're going to make an assumption based on their own experience and their own intuition. The problem is so much about plan giving is counterintuitive. And because there's a lag time of 5 years or so between the time that somebody does their final and operative will and the time they pass away, that 5-year cycle is often shorter than the length of time that a lot of people stay at a given nonprofit. And so they don't see the results. And even if they saw it, they wouldn't know what went into it from the plan giving perspective, from the plan giving staffs. They wouldn't know what kind of cultivation occurred, what kinds of involvement devices we used. And so what happens is by doing this sort of thing, senior management buys in. They begin to recognize that plan giving is really more of a science than just an art. They begin to recognize that there's some real money here. And when I can talk about $35 million in future commitments, as opposed to $3.5 million that comes in every year, that's worth a lot. So it's something that helps both the board and senior management both talk about plan giving, understand plan giving it better, and then beyond that, just recognize what kind of dollars are coming down the pike.
Right. So a lot of the senior management might have more corporate heads about things, and they're focused on ROI and that sort of thing. And when you don't really see the results right now, it can be hard to
That's right. That's exactly
see
it.
into the future. So the cathedral's a relatively, large, well-known organization.
Mm.
And I'm curious, what about smaller organizations, without a huge donor base or that maybe don't have a major matching pool? Do you have any advice or ideas for a scaled down version of this that could work for those organizations?
Absolutely. Keep in mind, it depends on the size of your constituency, the size of your budget, what kind of plan giving revenue you're typically generating annually right now. And there are charities like ACLU and the Holocaust Museum and the Smithsonian that are dramatically larger institutions that have done even better, far better than we have. But there are also a lot of smaller charities that have done it. And one of the keys is the question I get with frequency from some of the smaller groups I've talked to is how do we come up with that $1 million matching pool? Well, first of all, you don't need to have $1 million. That's what happened to work with us. But probably the easiest way to do that is if you're planning on launching some sort of campaign, some sort of capital campaign, comprehensive campaign, anything of that sort, you're always going to have a few donors that are going to make some very large gifts. Before they make a gift commitment, go to those donors and say, we really would ask you to do two things. One is we'd ask you to make a significant gift, and we'd like you to make it as part of this legacy challenge, so that you will kind of create this matching pool. And that way your gift is going to generate other gifts. So that's going to incentivize both the people making the matching gift and the others to make larger gifts. And if they're going to make large gifts to that institution anyway, this is a way of increasing the amount of money that they're going to be giving. And even if they don't increase it, it is a way of leveraging those dollars, and donors like that. The other thing that we did, and I think this is fairly typical, is we said the donors creating the matching gift pool, their money can go to wherever they want it to go. So if they want it to go to our operating budget, that's great. If they want it to go to our building and preservation endowment, this is a massive Gothic cathedral that is incredibly expensive to maintain, and everybody knows it, so they tend to give a lot to that, or to our program or the music or some other thing, that's fine. On the flip side, the donors that are making their estate gifts that won't come in for 10, 20 years or whatever it might be, can also decide where their money is going to go. So it's not restricted to either X or Y. They can make that decision. Now, I will say that in putting this together, we came up with 5 or 6 endowments that we really stressed and encouraged people. Now, in the case of the cathedral, it's designed to last for more than 1,000 years. Our finances are not structured right now to be able to pay for that. Yet we know that attendance at church and religion generally has been dropping for the last 50 years worldwide. And while the cathedral is actually growing, that's not something we can count on forever. And so endowment is really important to us. So what we did is we came up with these 5 or 6 endowments. The first one is general endowment. That's unrestricted, goes into long-term investment, and then we get 4 or 5% a year that goes and pays for operating budget. Anything beyond that just gets reinvested. A second is our building and preservation endowment. A third is our music endowment. Both music and building and preservation are incredibly popular with our donors. We have our worship endowment. We have an endowment for the Vicar's Fund to kind of keep the office of the vicar funded and taken care of. And we have our program fund, which takes care of a lot of other things, other kind of programmatic activities that the cathedral has. So we really encouraged people to make gifts restricted to endowment rather than just general, or to narrow gift areas that would not be practical for us to administer over time, or that might be really valuable today and not important at all in 10 or 20 years. Now, since these are a series of one-time capital gifts, and part of what happens, as Russell James talks about, an estate gift provides for symbolic immortality. The fact that this is going into an endowment, and in many cases we could name it for them. We could have a John Smith endowment that would go to help building and preservation activities, or to help music, or general endowment. It's the same thing, but it would be named for them and they would be given credit for it. So it's a way of kind of creating some of that symbolic immortality, and our donors responded. There was a very large percentage that ended up making gifts that were restricted to various endowments, and they were general purpose endowment, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, I will tell you that in my experience, that anywhere from 30 to 70% of bequests that come in most institutions are going to be entirely unrestricted. And part of the reason is that they don't make the decision to make the estate gift until very late in life. And they don't talk directly with the charity about where it should be used or how it should be used. Rather, they're saying, we trust you as a charitable institution. We trust that you will decide what is the best use for these funds. So you take it and do what's best.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this. You mentioned it earlier, some of the learning moments that you had putting this on. Was this your first time doing a legacy
Yes,
challenge?
it was. I've certainly heard of others that have done it. I've talked with others who had done it, but I'd never done it myself. And I guess the lessons learned, I've got, probably 10 or 12 lessons learned. First of all, matching gifts really motivate and generate buy-in. They get people off the dime and they create a sense of urgency. Second, it gives donors a reason to share the estimated value to generate those matching dollars. And we make it clear this is not a legal commitment. This is not going to bind you in any legal sense. If you either decide to take us out or you find that you no longer can make a gift of that sort, we're going to understand. And this is not that kind of commitment. Clearly, the biggest gifts are the residuary gifts, where the donors can't estimate the value of their IRA or the residue of their trust or their will, and telling them to use the current value of that gift today worked out really well. People really like that. 4, the concept is very simple, and I don't think you need a lot of expensive marketing materials to kind of launch this and to make it happen. You just need repetition. You need to be reminding them about this and laying out the details of how it works. And for those that have either inquired about plan giving in the past or those that have made a commitment, you want to try to reach them personally if you can. Legacy Challenge or Legacy Society members overwhelmingly thought the challenge didn't apply to them. They assumed we knew the gift details. So it's so important to reach them on a personal one-on-one basis. And usually that's a small enough number you can do that. Limiting a match to 10% of whatever the gift is doesn't reduce the larger gifts. I would like to have had more than $1 million, maybe $2 million. And I think I might have been able to generate even more, but I don't think it had a huge, massive impact. Focus on endowment and long-term impact is critical to this. You don't want people to think that this is going to be just used immediately as it comes in. You want them to think of this for the long term. You want to design your response form very carefully. You want to make sure you ask about restrictions, and you want to encourage unrestricted, broadly restricted endowment gifts. And I mentioned the 5 or 6 endowments that we have. Every one of those are things that we're going to be doing as long as we exist. I mean, you can't have a cathedral without taking care of the building, or without music, or without worship. And so, in effect, what's going on is those are being restricted to a given specific area, but they're also freeing up a lot of what would otherwise have to come out of the general fund. So that's a whole lot better than restricting it to a single stained glass window that they want to get corrected or get maintained, or to a single portion. We've got something called the Garth, which is an area of the fountain and vegetation kind of within the cathedral, but on the outside. People love it so much they want to endow it, but it doesn't make sense to endow that specific narrow area. So they tend to endow the Building and Preservation Fund instead. You also want to include major gift donors. They're some of your prime prospects because these are people that have already demonstrated that they have a real commitment to the institution. They're making substantial gifts, and they're more likely to put you in their estate plans, especially if asked. Now, a lot of the major gift donors are never asked for plan gifts because there are major gift staff that kind of protect them from plan giving staff and for everything else because they're somehow afraid that if you ask them for a gift in their estate, that's going to reduce their current large gifts. And as part of that, you absolutely need to get the major gift staff to buy into this. That's a key prospect because they are gatekeepers and they can effectively prevent you from reaching those major gift donors. Another one is you want to think through your crediting policies very carefully. So what we did is we said any kind of estate gift, will, trust, IRA, life insurance, real estate subject to a life estate, any of those sorts of things. And we also agreed to accept at the gift value, charitable gift annuity, so pooled income funds or charitable remainder trusts. So whatever the tax deductible value is, we accept that and that creates the match. All of these things is a great way to get plan giving buy-in from senior staff and from the board. And it's a nice way to go to board members and ask them to either make a commitment or share the fact that they've already made a commitment. You want to do this sort of thing because, among other things, it demonstrates that plan giving marketing really has an impact. And it demonstrates that there's some science behind all of this. It's not just luck and random chance because so many people assume that when a bequest comes in, oh, that's random, just out of the blue. We didn't know it was coming. You obviously couldn't have anything to do with it, even though you may have been in touch with that donor 20 or 30 or 40 times. So those are some of the lessons that I learned and we'll put into place the next time we do a legacy challenge, probably in 3 or 4 years, I'm guessing.
Okay, that was my next question, is if you were going to do another one, and when do you recommend spacing these out, and how often do you think we should do them?
My sense is 3, 4, 5 years strikes me as about right. I would probably make it a little bit shorter. I would probably start it maybe in January and end it either maybe in September or maybe, run it a little bit longer to the following year. So maybe it's 12 to 14 months, 15 months, something like that. Probably the one that's done this the most is Mohammed Zaiti at ACLU in New York. I think he has run 6 or 7 legacy challenges and he's done a phenomenal job down there. He's very good at this sort of thing. But, there are lots of different charities who have done it. I would say part of the issue about the frequency is you should get, if at all possible, a matching gift pool. Now, some charities have done this without getting a matching gift pool. What they've done is they've gotten an internal commitment, maybe a bequest that came in, and the board or management said, okay, use this as part of your legacy challenge. I don't think that works as well. I don't think it's as real. And part of it is that some people are skeptical about challenge programs or challenge campaigns of any sort. And the fact that I can point to 2 individuals that have done this and explain who they are and their involvement with the cathedral, I think has made a big difference. It gives a lot more credibility to what you're doing.
Excellent. John Jensen, thanks so much for joining us again and sharing your experience and expertise on these legacy challenges. Is there anything else you want to add, leave us with? Any advice for anyone?
Just that these are terrific ways of reaching people and generating commitments for the future and identifying people that you really need to be stewarding and caring for. Once you find out they put you in their estate plan, if you don't take care of them, they can yank you out just as quickly as they put you in. And this is a way of surfacing those people so that you can cultivate and steward them. They're just terrific people and they're great to spend time with.
Thanks, John. It sounds like a legacy challenge is a strategy worth serious consideration for
Absolutely.
Those nonprofits out there.
Absolutely.
As always, thanks for listening to Sharpe Insights. And if you found today's conversation helpful, please share it with your colleagues in the field. Contact our Sharpe team with any questions. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. Until next time, I'm Grant Miller. Thanks for listening. We hope today's discussion gave you practical takeaways to grow your plan giving program. To submit questions and topics for future episodes, go to sharpegroup.org or listen to us on your favorite podcast app. If you found this podcast insightful, be sure to like, review, and subscribe. Until then, stay sharp.